Dear ladies and gentlemen and everything around and in between, welcome to Icelandair, the flag carrier of, well, Iceland. A country with a population less than 25% of Manhattan's, yet home to a transcontinental airline with an annual net income of over 11 billion USD. Icelandair takes full advantage of its perfect location smack in the middle of the Northern Atlantic. But what really sets this airline apart from other European carriers, and what's it like to fly with them? Let's find out. Today's journey begins in the Swedish capital, Stockholm. Arlanda International, Stockholm's main airport, is served by Icelandair with 2 daily flights directly to Keflavík, a town near the Icelandic capital. Interestingly, most passengers don't stop in Iceland as their final destination. Instead, they continue onward to North America, making use of Icelandair's efficient hub-and-spoke model. Icelandair's business model is built around connecting North America with Europe, and technically Africa and Asia too, since they fly to the Canary Islands and Istanbul, but you get the idea. Essentially, Icelandair is like the Emirates of the Nordics, a hub-and-spoke airline from an incredibly rich and desert-like land, promising better service than your average normal airline. Good morning from Stockholm. I'll head to the train station now, called Centralstation. So I guess that's the central station. From where I will take the Arlanda express train to the airport, which will take me, I think, about 18 minutes. It's fucking expensive, but it's the fastest way to get to the airport, I think, the cheapest also. I still have to figure out which terminal I have to go to. I'm checked in already, and then I'm ready to head over to Iceland, where it will be even colder than here. It's my first time in Sweden, and overall I've always considered myself to be a big fan of the Nordics. I mean, everyone loves Iceland, everyone loves Finland, everyone, well, tolerates Sweden, but honestly, it's insanely expensive here, freezing cold, you can't buy booze nowhere, and cigarettes are crazy expensive, so maybe I don't like the Nordics after all. That said, I recently watched a Swedish Netflix series called Snabba Cash. It's set right here in Stockholm, and I swear it's one of the best shows I've ever seen, definitely worth checking out. Anyway, for me, I'm not checking out, I'm checking in, specifically onto the Arlanda Express, the train service connecting Stockholm city center to the airport. A one-way ticket costs just over 30 USD, however, if you're under 26, you get a discount. If you're older than that, but you're a student, you get a discount. If you're over 65, you get a discount. And if you're traveling in a group, guess what? You get a huge fat discount. Basically everyone gets a discount here, which is pretty great, especially considering how high the base fares are. Another impressive feature is the waiting area. Honestly, it's one of the nicest I've ever seen. The country I'm from is generally known for being a nice place with decent infrastructure, but our waiting area looks like this, while here they look like that. At first glance, I thought I was in a premium lounge or some fancy restaurant or something, but no, it's just for everyone. And if you're flying certain airlines, including Icelandair, you can even check in right here in the city center while waiting for the train. That's next level convenience, ladies and gentlemen. Gotta hand it to the Swedes, they know how to do things right.
Continue to Terminal 5, which is our final stop.
Welcome to Stockholm Arlanda Airport, the largest and busiest airport in Sweden. Stockholm Arlanda is also the only destination in the country served by Icelandair, which I found rather surprising. They fly to numerous cities in other Nordic countries like Norway, Denmark and Greenland, but only one in Sweden, but I guess that's just a matter of demand. But speaking of demand, In general, it seems to be growing for Icelandair, and they've positioned themselves well with attractive packages, including their popular stopover program. While Icelandair occasionally offers competitive prices, it's important to note that it's not a budget airline. This means you can check in at the airport for free and bring a 10 kg cabin bag at no extra charge, even with the basic fare. That said, I opted to check in online, which was surprisingly easy and straightforward, a great way to start a journey. Security took less than 5 minutes, and since both Sweden and Iceland are part of the Schengen zone, there's no need to worry about passport control either. Terminal 5 at Stockholm Arlanda Airport looks really nice. The minimalist design paired with lots of bright wood gives it a sleek, modern vibe. Honestly, it feels a bit like an airport designed by IKEA. That also means quite long walks, but sadly no cheap hot dogs or köttbullar to be found here. There is, however, the Pearl Lounge, which you can access with Priority Pass. I believe it's also accessible with Icelandair Saga Club Silver Card, though I can't confirm that for sure. The Icelandair website still lists the previous lounge in Terminal 5, which has since closed, and the link provided there is broken. Yeah, I guess culinary options aren't exactly the main reason people move to Sweden. That said, for airport lounge food, I've definitely seen worse. It's not amazing, but it does the job. Alright, I think I've kept you waiting long enough. It's finally time to board our Icelandair flight FI 307 to Reykjavik. Our ride? Well, it's my least favorite aircraft, a 6.5-year-old Boeing 737 MAX 8. This particular jet flew for Norwegian Air Shuttle until 2022 and has since found a new home with the Nordic competitor in Iceland. I step on board and greet the crew, who don't bother greeting me back, understandable, and I make my way through the surprisingly nice business class cabin, something you don't typically see on European narrowbodies. However, I am seated all the way back in cattle class at seat 20A. At first glance, the seat looks pretty decent, and what immediately catches my eye is the personal screen in front of me. This feature alone sets Icelandair's narrowbody aircraft apart from almost every other European airline. But considering they compete with long-haul carriers on transatlantic routes, it makes sense. And there's plenty more that stands out about their service. One of my favorites is this kind of adjustable headrest that looks really nice and makes me feel like I'm sitting in some expensive sports car. No idea how it feels to sit in an expensive sports car, to be honest. But I'm sure you can push your seat a bit back in a sports car, which unfortunately here is not a possibility. We have a legroom of 78 centimeters or 31 inch for my American friends, which is pretty average. However, if you're a tall giraffe like me, it will always be uncomfortable in economy class. Almost as the door was about to close, and I thought I'd secure the jackpot with an empty seat next to me, in comes this guy, completely out of breath, stomping down the aisle, and of course plops right down next to me. Now, as you may know, I'm a pretty tolerant person. I'm against bullying and all the things the cool kids did to me in school. But let me tell you, this man was at least double my weight, and look, I don't want to get cancelled for calling someone fat, so let's just say he was horizontally gifted. As a matter of fact, he was so gifted he couldn't close his seatbelt, and the armrest between us couldn't even come down, not even a little bit. Therefore, also my space got significantly smaller and warmer, and that brings me to a kind of controversial topic. But do you think that significantly plus-size people should have to buy 2 seats? I'm not talking about someone who's just a bit chubby. I mean the whale kind of big people, morbidly obese kind of big people, or in other words, the American kind of big people. It's not just uncomfortable for them, it also affects the space and comfort of those around them. I know this is a controversial topic, and in 2025 it's nearly impossible to not offend someone, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Should airlines provide extra space, or should passengers take responsibility for their weight if it impacts others? Let me know what you think in the comments. Anyway, in the end we all realized that it's not going to work, and he was seated on an aisle seat and some elderly woman sat next to me. So we pushed back, I listened to the safety instructions spoken with the charm of my 3rd grade English teacher, and we finally leave Sweden behind us.
Any luggage should be placed in an overhead compartment or secured under the seat in front of you. If you are seated by an exit.
As I have pointed out, one of the advantages of Icelandair over other airlines in Europe is the IFE. It's pretty responsive, even though it doesn't look like it right now. But I'm just too stupid to understand how it works. Anyway, there are a lot of things to do here. We have a big selection of movies. I think there's over 300 hours of content on this IFE, so it's more than enough to watch. Other than movies, we also have a lot of TV shows. Mostly the classics, and the music is not really my taste, but there's also some of that. Anyway, there is also a flight map. I didn't found it at first, but somewhere there is, and there's also some other stuff that I did not really look into. You also have the option to charge your phone on board, though only through a USB 3 outlet. There's also Wi-Fi available for 12 USD per flight, which is nice. I, however, decided to get some sleep instead. A solid choice thanks to the good recline and generally comfortable seat, at least in my opinion. I got woken up by a friendly stewardess handing out drinks. While snacks or alcoholic beverages aren't included, soft drinks are free. Considering the flights to Iceland are relatively long and Icelandair competes with direct flights, I feel like a light meal would be a nice touch, but yeah, it's the Nordics. And honestly, most of Europe is pretty minimal when it comes to in-flight perks. Anyway, after drinking something, I opt to enjoy the view outside. Iceland at this time of the year is, well, icy. But there's something magical about the view when landing. Just enjoy the view for yourself. By the way, if you want to see me visiting random countries on random airlines, don't forget to subscribe. Welcome to Reykjavik Airport, the hub of Icelandair. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of this airport. The distances feel unnecessarily long and the terminal layout seems to change every time you visit. Plus, the airport is quite far from the city, and as you'd expect in Iceland, everything is ridiculously expensive. That said, I'm still fascinated by Iceland and Icelandair. When it comes to service, there are some clear drawbacks, but why was I still positively surprised? Well, if you've ever flown within Europe, you'll know the bar is typically set pretty low. I'm talking about cramped legroom, no in-flight entertainment, and business class being nothing more than an economy cabin with a full block middle seat. Full service carriers within Europe often don't offer much more than budget airlines like Ryanair or Wizz Air. By comparison, Icelandair really stands out. So if you compare it to long-haul carriers, I think Icelandair, despite some drawbacks, is a solid alternative. Sometimes it's significantly cheaper, and for people who don't like flying long stretches, the stopover gives you a chance to stretch your legs. Plus, their stopover programs are generally a nice touch. all in all, I'd say the value you get for what you pay is definitely there. However, if you're looking to go ultra budget, you might want to check out Iceland's new low-cost carrier, Play Airlines. You can find my video on them right here. Thank you so much for watching and see you again soon.